Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you.
Hey, what's up guys? This is Josh from Nightmare on Woodsboro Lake. It's about 10:30 right now. I'm coming at you live from my front porch. Here to do a different kind of video tonight, not my normal reaction reviews. Tonight I was hoping to kind of jump in on that bandwagon of, my top 10 favorite horror movies, which, honestly, thinking about my list, a lot of people are going to love it or hate it. There might be a few middle of the road people, but, my choices are pretty widespread, though a lot of them seem to be in like the 80s and 90s, surprisingly enough. I do like some of the current, horror films that have come out, in the 2000s and whatnot, but you can't beat some of the classics. So, we're gonna jump right into this right now with my number one. That's gonna be Scream, 1996, directed by Wes Craven, featuring Drew Barrymore, Neve Campbell, Skeet Ulrich, something like that. Matthew Lillard and Jamie Kennedy, Courtney Cox, and David Arquette. Just that whole reinvention of horror movies that was going on, that kick-started really, I feel like, with this movie, where it was self-aware, very meta, acknowledges like actual horror movies that exist in the real world, not like made up films, because I've noticed that in some movies there's like, they always have some kind of made up movie or something that they go and see and stuff. When in this one they actually reference like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and a lot of other movies were referenced in that film. I really enjoyed the whodunit aspect, the very murder mystery about it, because you had your red herrings that were like, you're like, oh man, that has to be who it is, and then part of you was like, could it be? Or maybe they're just making it seem like it's definitely could be them, so that you're like, no, that's too obvious, and then you like kind of veer away from that option, but then it ends up coming back and ends up being who you thought it was going to be, and you're like, holy crap, they just totally screwed with my mind, which was definitely the case, because they made Billy Loomis, Sidney Prescott's boyfriend, seem very obvious, and it seemed almost too obvious that it would be him. So you're like, well, maybe they're just trying to put that out there so you kind of get misled. But maybe he's not the killer, and he totally ends up, spoiler alert, totally ends up being the killer, or one of the killers, which was genius. I mean, Wes Craven, rest in peace. Dude was a genius. I mean, you can argue with me day in and day out, but I really think he did a great job with all the films that he came out with. I mean, I really enjoyed Nightmare on Elm Street series, even amidst the cheesiness, and also really enjoyed his movie Cursed with Christina Ricci and Jesse Eisenberg. I thought that one was fun. And obviously the Scream franchise. So I don't know, that movie just has resonated with me for a very long time. I love the Ghostface character. I love how it can be anyone. You know, it's not like a killer coming back from the dead. It's a living flesh and blood person who is just out to murder and cause mayhem. So I really enjoy that. So that's going to be my numero uno. Um, my second one on my list, going in a different direction, it's a bit older, uh, still a slasher. Friday the 13th, Part 6. Jason Lives. I really enjoyed like 4, 5, and 6 following Tommy Jarvis. He, you know, with all the crap going on in his life that he went through with, you know, family members being murdered and like having to kill Jason as a young kid, really psychologically like fried his brain in a lot of aspects. I mean, dude had serious PTSD. Um, but for good reason, obviously. I mean, Jason's a freaking monster, man. Uh, he's like one of my favorite horror movie icons. Because he's just tall, brooding, silent. I mean, the hockey mask looks awesome. Even in Part 7, like, I really enjoyed his look with, you know, like the rotting, been underwater for a while kind of corpse. Like, you could see his, like, his bones coming through, and, like, just that dark look that he had in that movie was pretty rad. But going back to Part 6, you know, Tommy, the movie starts out with Tommy going to dig up Jason's body to make sure it was really him. Once again, spoiler alerts. If you don't want spoilers, do not watch this video. Just heads up. I know I kind of just dove right in without giving you that little disclaimer, but so, you know, Part 5, he ends up at that, like, mental rehabilitation kind of place, and, you know, people around him start dying again, and, you know, he sees Jason, or what he believes to be Jason, terrorizing him once again, kind of invading his life, but it actually ends up being the paramedic from the movie whose son was murdered at that mental rehabilitation center by one of the other kids that was there. I mean, dude looked like a full-grown man. I don't know if he was really a teenager or not. You know what they tried to get away with back in those days in the 80s. But ends up being the paramedic, Roy. And so Part 6, you know, Tommy's just totally wrecked because of everything that happened at that rehabilitation center. So, you know, he goes out with a friend from his like therapy, or from the rehabilitation place, and digs up Jason's body and just goes completely ballistic on this thing, because he wants to make sure that he's really dead, and he's really pissed off. I think, you know, Jason definitely took him to a very dark place. But it ends up, this backfires on him and brings Jason back to life when, like, the lightning storm that was going on overhead strikes the fence post from the cemetery fence that he stabs through Jason multiple times. And then he pretty much unleashes a monster back on everybody again. And, you know, as much as that was a horrible move on his part, obviously it makes for another sequel. I mean, you feel for him. He's totally, I don't want to say damaged goods. Like, he's just totally messed up inside because of what this horrible monster took from him and what it had done to him. He went from being like, you know, like just a normal fun-loving kid with a nice family who, he enjoyed making like sci-fi masks and everything, and Jason totally just wrecked his world. And so you feel for him when he's just like, I've got to make sure, like, and then he just lets out his rage, and you can't blame him for that, like, at all. I mean, as much as you like, dude, you're an idiot. What are you doing? He was buried, dead. Leave it alone. I mean, but so yeah, he pretty much unleashes Jason once again on Camp Crystal Lake, which I think they renamed Camp Forest Green or something like that. They try to rename the town to kind of, bury that horrible past that none of them want to acknowledge happen, and kind of just wipe it from their history. But yeah, he ends up unleashing Jason once again out into that world. And ultimately, he teams up with the police officer's daughter, or the sheriff's daughter, Megan, and ends up chaining Jason to the bottom of the lake. But, between the score that they used, the music, and just the atmosphere of that movie and some of the kills that were in it, I'm not going to spoil the whole thing for you. I really, really enjoyed that. I think that was one of my favorite installments in the series. So yeah, that's why it is my number 2 on the list. Sorry if I sound like I'm ranting. I'm just trying to formulate my thoughts here, because obviously this isn't scripted. I'm sure there are people out there that plan this out and script this out, but I'm just being upfront, honest, and just kind of, sharing my list with you. So, my third one is going to be Night of the Living Dead. I do enjoy the black and white original, don't get me wrong, of course. George A. Romero is one of my favorite directors, aside from Wes Craven, as I've previously stated in one of my past videos for the trailer Day of the Dead. George A. Romero, rest in peace, man. You did a hell of a job pioneering the zombie genre, and I know there is an unreleased film, I guess, that's been circulating around the internet, and I'm really hoping that someone can make that and do that justice, because George A. Romero was a mastermind as well as Wes Craven. But Night of the Living Dead, the version, the 90s version, the remake, you got good old Tony Todd in that. He's definitely a horror icon. Whether that's Candyman, obviously, is a big one. I mean, he was in, he wasn't really the main villain, but he was in The Crow, Final Destination, the movies, is like the Mortician, and a ton of other movies. I'm sure I could go on. I just would have to really think about all the movies he's been in. But Hellfest. I mean, that's more recent, but like I really enjoyed even his small like cameo bit in that movie. But I don't know. I've always had a thing for like the zombie movies and the zombie shows. Night of the Living Dead is such a classic. Even the remake, I mean, I think they did it a lot of justice. They made it a little more realistic, a little better practical effects, and a little better, just like FX makeup and everything that they used for that. They're coming to get you, Barbara. Look, there's one of them now. I'll always remember that line. Her brother was such a dick. But I don't know, just the whole, a bunch of people end up trapped in a farmhouse fighting off the evil dead overnight, and then people getting infected within the house, and then you've got both the issue of there being a breach from the outside as well as internally. It just it was a really fun movie, in my opinion, and it would end up sparking my interest in the rest of the zombie movies, like, Land of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, Return of the Living Dead movies. Once again featuring Tom Matthews, great actor. But I mean, I'm not going to go real deep into that because there's not a lot about it. There's not as much of a plot. I mean, obviously there is a plot. Like, lady goes out with her brother to a funeral, finds out like everybody's dead. She gets attacked. Her brother gets turned into a zombie. She runs away, ends up at this farmhouse, meets up with these other people. They get trapped in the farmhouse. I mean, pretty substandard plot, but very well directed, though, still, in my opinion, and very fun, very campy, so I enjoyed that. It's definitely number 3 because it definitely, like, shot me off in the direction of other zombie films, so I definitely give it credit for being the gateway drug, and a matter of speaking, to zombie films for me. Now, for my number 4, would be The Lost Boys from 1987, featuring some well-recognized actors such as Kiefer Sutherland, Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, and Jamie Gertz, and then, oh god, I can't remember the character. I mean, Michael, the one who played Michael. Can't remember his name in real life, but I just enjoyed that movie a lot. With the whole story of the family moving to their grandfather's house out in California. They end up finding out it's like murder capital of the world, or like something like that, and end up finding out there's like this whole like nest of vampires that live there, and the main character's brother ends up becoming one of the vampires, in pursuit of Jamie Gertz's character, who is also a vampire, but she's not evil like Kiefer Sutherland's vampire or the other guys. Oh god, what's that guy's name? Something Winters from Bill and Ted. He's in that movie. The mom, she was like in Edward Scissorhands and some movies like that. Can't remember her name either. But yeah, so Corey Haim, he enlists the help of these two brothers that work in a comic book store. I think his name was like Edgar Frock, and like his brother was Alan or something like that. And so they're gonna help him take down these, they call them bloodsuckers because obviously that's what they do. But it's that struggle of they have to kill the vampires, but he's trying to also save his brother, who's all in turn trying to save Jamie Gertz and this little boy that have been like stuck with Kiefer Sutherland and his group of misfits in this little coastal town in California. But I don't know, it was just like such a fun like vampire movie. Like, I enjoyed Blade and stuff like that too, and like some of the newer stuff too. Like I might get hate for this, but I enjoyed Dracula Untold, with Luke Evans playing Dracula. I liked that take on Dracula as not only the vampire that we know him as, but also as Vlad the Impaler. and his like historical significance, not just the horror movie monster that we know. But Lost Boys, I really enjoyed it. One of my favorite like songs, as dinky as this may seem, is "I Still Believe" by Tim Capello, who performs it live on the beach in like the very beginning of the movie almost. But that had a really good soundtrack as well, you know, like "Cry Little Sister" and like "People Are Strange." I don't know, it just had like a really fun soundtrack and a really fun premise, and you know, rest in peace Corey Haim. But it just was a fun vampire movie. They don't make them like they used to, really, in my opinion. But yeah, I could go on. Like, I'm trying to like wrap this up because I'm trying not to rant too much. I'm already like 20 minutes into this video, and I'm on number 4 out of 10. But yeah, good movie. Lands number 4 on my list. Now, number 5 is going to be Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow from 1999 with, you know, Johnny Depp, Christina Ricci, I think, yeah, Christopher Lloyd, or not Christopher Lloyd, not Back to the Future, oh my god, I know his name, Sir Christopher, I'm going to beat myself up over this, but we're just going to go past that. I feel bad because I love him as a character. I love him in so many movies, even like as Count Dooku in Star Wars. But it's got them, and it's got, I think, not, oh god, I can't remember the other guy's name either, but he played Alfred in like Batman Forever, or, you know, with the one with Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones and Val Kilmer. But you know, it had some recognizable faces in that movie. But I've always had a fascination ever since I was a little kid and like heard the story and saw like the Disney's Sleepy Hollow, you know, the whole story of the Hessian soldier, the headless horseman, taking other people's heads because he lost his head during the war. You got this Ichabod Crane, school teacher. And this, he's a constable, not really a school teacher, and the Tim Burton version, where he gets sent from like New York or something like that, like from like the big city to Sleepy Hollow to investigate these murders that are going on. Has no idea, doesn't believe in the supernatural. His wife or his mom was killed, and you know, tortured and killed. She was even put in an Iron Maiden at one point for being a witch, which we all know, you know, back in those days. I don't know if that falls right in that timeline with like the Salem witch trials, but you know how that whole story goes with like hunting down the witches and you know, all these methods of torturing and killing them that they had because they were trying to take away God's promised land that was promised to the Puritans. But no, so he gets sent to investigate these murders and ends up finding out that it's the Headless Horseman. And he has to figure out a way to stop this from happening so these decapitations cease to continue. For me, it definitely stuck with me. because as a kid, sorry, I just had some like douchebag people just throw something in my yard as they drove by. I live in a very small town, not like 100 people small town, like 4,000, which in this day and age is pretty small still. Um, Kind of like a little country town, but so yeah, he has to find out a way to stop the headless horseman. Oh, I was saying, as a kid, the first opening scenes, like where that guy is like, taking like the horse and buggy kind of thing through the countryside out there in Sleepy Hollow, and his driver gets his head cut off. Um, and then he ends up running through the cornfield and runs into the scarecrow with like a pumpkin head, and then turns around and gets hacked up. God, I was 1999. I was like 8 or 9 years old when my uncle's girlfriend showed all of us that movie, and shoot, man, that was ingrained in my brain. But it was funny because she like snuck up behind me when that scene was happening and scared the living crap out of me. Uh, but good movie. I love the tale of the headless horseman. It's one of my like destinations that I really want to go before I die. To Sleepy Hollow, or I think it was also called Tarrytown, just down the river from like New York and like Rhode Island and stuff like that. I've always made it a goal of mine to go out there. One of my favorite hoodies is actually the Headless Horseman I got from this online store, and it's pretty sick. But oh yeah, tonight rocking the alien shirt I got from those Loot Fright crates. I love those things. So great. Maybe I'll do like an unboxing one of these times. But yeah, that was my number 5. Jumping right into number 6, we have Silver Bullet, the Stephen King film, featuring like Gary Busey and once again Corey Haim. Story of this kid lives in a kind of a small town, and he is paralyzed, so he does have to use a chair. He has this uncle that's kind of a drunk, and his mom really doesn't like him being around him too much. But he ends up like making like this really cool like little cart for him called Silver Bullet. But it ends up there's like these werewolf attacks in his town. The whole town's in an uproar. They're like trying to hunt this thing down, find it. He even runs into the werewolf, and I think he shoots it in the eye with like a firework. And takes off, but him and his sister, he gets his sister like wrapped up in this thing, and they end up finding, spoiler alert, that it is the pastor of the town who's like a very solidified religious figure in their community. So nobody would expect that this guy is out murdering people and becoming this ungodly creature, the werewolf. But once again, it's just one of those fun movies. I mean, the plot isn't too extensive, but like, I really enjoyed it. Fun werewolf movie. Definitely worth the watch, I think. I like a lot of Stephen King's books and some of the movie adaptions. Some of them I don't feel like do the books enough justice, but they're all still fun watches. He's such a story, like such a story weaver. I mean, he hits you with these twists and these turns, and then these like these like plots that like he like flips them up on their head, and like that's kind of the way I also felt about like, you know, growing up as a kid and reading Goosebumps. Is like you're like reading through the book, reading through the book, reading through the book, and then like the ending is just like you're like, oh, happy ending, and then boom, not quite. Sorry, you're not a winner. But I really enjoy Stephen King, but definitely a movie worth a watch. Gary Busey, oh my God, he's always been a character. It seems like no matter what he's in or what he's doing. Um, so yeah, that is my number 6 on my list. Now my next one, number 7, is Dawn of the Dead. Shocker, another zombie movie. Um, but the 2004 version with Ving Rhames and Kevin Zeger and oh God, what's that guy's name in real life? The one who plays on like Modern Family. It's got some recognizable faces, for sure. It's just really late, and my brain is obviously not working at full capacity at the moment. But I really like how quick the movie kind of progresses along. I mean, you start out with this nurse working at, you know, like this clinic or hospital or whatever. She goes home for the evening, and you kind of get a glimpse of what, kind of like this inkling of what's about to happen. But she goes home, goes to bed, you know. Normal, seems like a normal day in, day out kind of thing, like her schedule. But things take a horrible turn that next morning. I think it's like a neighbor girl, or I don't think it's their daughter. Shoot, it's been a while. I can't remember, but she's like lurking out in the hallway. The husband or whatever is like, "Hey, like, you okay, honey? Like, what's wrong?" And she like attacks him. Totally like rips out his like his neck, and like, you know, they're freaking out trying to get a hold of like, you know, like paramedics or somebody to come like help them. And he ends up like turning. It's like it's not like instantaneous, but it's pretty damn quick that these people become zombies after they've been bitten. So she's forced out of her house. Like, she crawls through the window, gets in her car. There's like chaos going all over the neighborhood. People just being eaten alive and ripped apart, and like this woman being like eaten, raped in the back of this like bus. Like, it's just total chaos, utter anarchy going on. And she ends up wrecking her car and passing out because this guy tries to like get in her car, and like he's like trying to force his way in, and she ends up driving off the road, and yeah, you know, gets in a wreck. She runs her car into a tree, wakes up, ends up stumbling upon this police officer, and then they make their way into this mall, this abandoned shopping mall, which we end up finding out it's not completely abandoned. A bunch of security guards are holed up in there, and they're a bunch of pricks. At least 2 of them are. The one is kind of just like there with them, and he's kind of like you can tell he's kind of like the young one of the group, kind of the, I don't want to say trainee, but he's new on the, obviously you can tell he hasn't been around like the other guys have, but so they end up being prisoner at first in this mall, and then they eventually, you know, they lock away the other guys, the security guards, and then the tables have flipped, and they're running this mall. um, and just living their best life in this abandoned shopping mall in the midst of of the zombie apocalypse. I almost said pandemic. We're in the middle of a pandemic, but no, the zombie apocalypse, and but then they're trying to formulate a plan to get out of there because you can only live in a mall for so long. They're looking for somewhere to like start fresh, and the one rich guy ends up having a boat, and they're like make these plans and like gear up and get things going to like drive and get on his boat and go to this island and stuff. And just like some of the moments in that movie, like there was a scene where one of the girls that's in there, her dad gets bitten, and he's slowly starting to turn, which is weird because a lot of the other ones were just like, but they made like the husband, it might have been because like he was bleeding out quicker, he died quicker, so he turned quicker. So this guy's bit, he's slowly becoming a zombie. One of the security guys is in love with this girl, and she's struggling with her dad because they know that they have to do like the worst imaginable thing and kill this guy, leaving this girl with no one. But it was just so sad. I mean, in such a short time, because a lot of movies, they really struggle at this, but like a lot of them struggle with developing this attachment that you can develop for these characters. Like you feel for them, you don't want them to die, and you feel this sense of loss when they are killed. And that was just one of those scenes that I felt like really kind of like struck hard. Like how would I react in that situation? Like my mom got bit or something, or my wife got bit, and I knew that there was no cure that we knew of, and the only way to not hurt anybody else was to kill them and shoot them in the head. It just like struck this personal chord, and I like when movies can like really pull on your heartstrings a little bit and kind of like make you invest yourselves in these characters. So that movie did a good job at that with some of the characters, and there was a lot of real badass like scenes that I enjoyed. Plenty of like gore and carnage candy for people that really enjoy that. And I don't know, the movie ends like you're like, oh man, they found an island, and you're like, I don't know what's gonna happen next, and ends up there is some zombies waiting for them already on the island, and then you don't know what happened. Like the dude drops his like video camera on the dock, and like things are going crazy, and like you're like, man, do any of them make it out? Like it's very open ended because you're like, well, they don't get quite their happy ending, but does anybody make it? Followed by that freaking Disturbed song, "Down with the Sickness." It was very well suited for that ending. But yeah, just a fun zombie movie that I really enjoy. That was my number 7. And so my number 8, another one by my man Wes Craven. It is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I really liked how out of the box and very meta this movie was, and very self-aware, and the way that they took Freddy in a new direction, beyond the wisecracking dream master that just is out to get all these teenagers on Elm Street. At first it's definitely like just revenge on these kids of the parents that burned him alive. But with Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Spoiler alert. Once again, turn it off if you don't want to know. But it takes a look at the people who we know have come to know and love from the movies as themselves. And Freddy is just a character. And, Wes Craven is in the movie as himself, Robert Englund as himself, as well as he plays Freddy, but a much more darker Freddy, like, ends up being this demonic entity that has been essentially plaguing Wes Craven's dream, and that's why he or dreams, sorry, plural, which sparked him to write Nightmare on Elm Street. But yeah, this one is not a wisecracking kind of Freddy. He is more of a, he does make some like suggestive comedic remarks, but he is just way more brutal and darker than any other Freddy. And the makeup was, man, on a whole nother level. Freddy's has always had pretty good, like, effects, like with his, like, burned and boiled, like, in skin, and like his glove with the razor blades, but it dives into Freddy coming after man, what is going on? But I'm just having like the dickens of a time with names right now. But the girl who plays Nancy from the original movie and part 3. But he is literally terrorizing her and her son, more so even than her, as her son is just being terrorized by Freddy. But everybody starts to think that she's going crazy, because she's had stalkers in the past. It kind of reflects on that too, that she's dealt with some traumatic experiences from her fame. But everybody's starting to think that she's kind of starting to lose it, because she is starting to like swear up and down that Freddy is real. He's not just a character. But she does kind of get some confirmation from Wes that there is more to Freddy than just the story that he's written, that he's been having these nightmares, and that's what's like led to him writing these movies. But I just really like how they played with that concept, with Freddy being a real character, aside from like being just this movie figure, like this horror icon, but being this demonic entity that is actually in existence and really does, attack people in their dreams. And I don't think it has that same backstory, obviously, as like the child murderer who gets burned alive, but he's just something so dark, so much colder. And I just really enjoyed that take. I could sit here and rant all night long about this movie, because it was just so cool to see. So I'm just going to stop myself there, because I'm just like babbling, and I really need to like try to wrap this up. So my number 8 is going to be Halloween 2018. I really do enjoy the original Halloween, of course, and I do enjoy some of the other ones. Like, I did enjoy Halloween H2O, and like like some of the other ones, like 4 and 5, and some of them are hit or miss for me. There's a lot of Halloween movies. I've never seen Part 3 Season of the Witch, but that doesn't even revolve around Michael Myers. Obviously, that one kind of like takes a step away from Michael Myers and goes in a different direction. But I've heard good things about it. Eventually, I plan to watch it. I need to. But I really enjoyed how Halloween 2018 kind of bypasses the other films in the franchise and goes directly from part one to this being like the sequel. I mean, it totally gets rid of her son and everything, and like all that stuff that happened between, and her dying. Essentially, it erases that from the timeline, kind of skews off into this other one, where she has a daughter and a granddaughter, and she's literally raised her daughter to be paranoid and ready for anything, and just stressing about that Michael Myers is one day going to come back and try to get me, and I need to be ready. And so she's kind of pressed that on her family, and so she is kind of this black sheep. Like her daughter doesn't really allow her to be around much, to see her granddaughter grow up. I mean, she does get interaction with her, but it's not like on the level that it should be for like a grandmother and granddaughter relationship. But I really enjoyed that film, and just that look at Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. Sorry. Dude, it's just been a night, obviously. I really enjoyed that look at like the paranoid, like, not doomsday prepper, but just like a prepper in general, and the way she rigged her house, and she was ready for Michael Myers. I mean, she's paranoid, but she's not like, I wouldn't say like afraid. She is ready for him, but she is just like putting her life on hold almost to watch out for this, this dark stain in her past. And she ends up being right. I mean, obviously, without that, wouldn't be like a Halloween movie. But I'm excited for Halloween Kills to follow up with the 2018 movie. And then Halloween Ends. But Halloween Kills, man, that trailer looked sick. And I liked how, it gave us some kills, but it didn't dive into the whole story plot, which is good. But it looks like it's on a way larger scale. Like the whole town of Haddonfield is aware of Michael Myers, and they're wanting to rid their town of this this evil presence that's kind of loomed over their town and left such a hideous stain on their town. But man, there was some gory scenes in Halloween, and some real carnage candy that people could really sink their teeth into. Overall, just a fantastic movie, and so dark, and gotta love John Carpenter's obviously the Halloween theme, and just that soundtrack. He really set the mood with his music in the original film in those movies. And I know that they updated the songs and made them a little more current, and added synth, and a little more synth, and whatnot. But such a cool soundtrack. But yeah, it's just a really good installment. I feel like I said, I do like the other Halloween films, but I do like that alternate timeline that they've created, with skipping from 1 to 2018. But it's a fun watch. Can't wait for Halloween Kills this October. That is my number 9. And so, last but not least, getting to my number 10. Um, this one was just kind of unique, and I don't know. People might give me a lot of hate for this too, but I enjoyed Sinister. Um, Main character Ethan Hawke and his family. You know, he's an author living in this small town. You come to find out that the house that they lived in, like, there's been all these like murders that happened, and they find like these old like home movies where it shows like the way that these people died and these like horrific um, events, from like being choked out in the car to like drowned, hung, like, God, there's so many different ways. But then you end up finding out that it's this boogeyman character kind of figure who's been actually like, I don't know how to put this, but like he's kind of like condemned these children in this house and like created these little monsters, man, that just like murder their whole families. And it's just like a weird, just out there concept, but I really enjoyed it. As the main character enlists the help of like this like professor from the college, and this police officer who loves his books. And as they try to like figure out, you know, what happened to like these families, they don't know that it's like the children, and that they're being like, I don't know, possessed is the right word, but like, you know, he like takes these children away and leaves these hollow husks that do his bidding, and kill their families. So I don't know, just interesting premise. Fun watch again. Really dark, and man, that I can't remember what his name was, but he was like kind of like this boogeyman. Like he was like, I think they said he was like a god of some kind, but like in like an ancient time. But he looked really good too, and just the way that they like incorporated him in the movie too, kind of in the background and kind of like appearing in these images and stuff. Just a real cool movie. I really enjoyed it. So, you know, looking at my list, you know, there's so many movies that I love, and it was really hard to compile a list of my top horror movies because there are so many that could go on that list. I mean, really, I was just thinking of these movies, and I'm like, yeah, I really enjoy these. These definitely are on my top list. But the problem is, if I was going off of like my full on top list, it'd be in the hundreds, or at least 100. That might be stretching it, but like there are so many horror movies that I just cherish and love so much that it was hard for me to decide. But I mean, I can stand by my list for sure. Um, yeah. So um, that was my top 10 list. Uh, but I have a bonus movie that I wanted to just like toss out there and mention as well. Um, it is the fan film Never Hike Alone, by Vincent DiSanti, and Womp Stomp Films. Once again, that is a Friday the 13th fan film, uh, based around this kind of like not a vlogger, but like this like YouTube guy or video guy who like does all these hikes and like talks about like camping and outdoor stuff. And I think his name was like Kyle McLeod or McClout or McLeod. but you have him doing another one of his videos in his series, and goes on this hike, unknowingly ending up at Camp Crystal Lake, of all places that he could have ended up in the world. But he stumbles upon the old camp and runs into none other than my boy Jason, and has to survive the night out there in the wilderness with Jason lurking out there. And ultimately, it ends with him in the back of an ambulance, and he's being treated by these paramedics, and one of the paramedics ends up being my favorite character from the Friday the 13th franchise. Mr. Tommy Jarvis, played by the awesome Tom Matthews, of course. But the two other paramedics end up getting slaughtered, and him and Tommy end up taking off towards town, and Jason, he's like, no, F this, I'm not done with you. And he it looks like he starts following them into town, and that's where that leaves off. But I really just enjoyed it. It was it was a really fresh take on the Friday the 13th series, which is obviously one of my favorite series, aside from like Scream and stuff like that, and like zombie movies. But I like the direction that they took that movie. It definitely was a fun watch, and so well done. The practical effects, the shots, the atmosphere, the soundtrack, everything was phenomenal. I am so glad there are people out there like that are like, pursuing that and giving the fans what they really want, because Hollywood's in it just to make the money. I don't think they care about these movies as much as like these fan film producers do. They're more in it for the art and the love of the films than these Hollywood big corporate bigwigs that like are just in pursuit of money and to make a quick buck. So that definitely falls as a bonus on my list. So technically you get 11. But so good. And the Never Hike in the Snow was a great follow-up, for sure. I feel really bad for like the characters in that movie and how that goes, but like definitely good follow-up, and I am so excited for the rest of the movies in that series. I'm sure they won't disappoint. But yeah, guys, that was my top list of horror movies. Hope you guys enjoyed that. You know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will definitely take into consideration any like suggestions you might have. And I'm going to catch you guys later. Have a good night.